was born and raised in Iran.
All right.
I moved to the United States when I was 16 years old, and so I didn't speak a word of English. And the only thing that felt like freedom was maybe I can make a bit of money to buy the things that a 16-year-old girl wants to buy. I had $300 when I just started my business. Business becomes joy. So that money, wealth, freedom, the lifestyle that you would like to experience or the level of contribution you want to have is hooked with joy and love and peace instead of struggle and hard work.
Welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thanks so much for tuning in once again. Today on the show, our special guest is Dr. Nona Djavid, and she is known for her expertise in entrepreneurship, holistic wellness, and business coaching. She's also the author of Elevate Your Life and the founder of the Elevate Club. And we're so excited to have her on the show today. So, Nona, this podcast is all about success. And so we want to start this conversation off and really set the framework for what we're going to talk about today. And to do that, we need to understand the fundamental question, which is, what does success mean to you?
Okay, I have a couple of answers to that one. One, for me, the definition of success and really honestly, even happiness, they sort of tie in together. And for me, the definition for both of those is growth. So, how much growth am I experiencing or have I experienced compared to myself in my last version of myself? So, if I'm experiencing growth as a mom, if I'm experiencing growth as a partner, if I'm experiencing growth as a friend, as a business owner in my business, then I know I can be successful, again, relative to my previous self. And that brings me happiness.
Right. So it's more about growth and happiness for you.
I would say growth. My
Yep.
definition of how I know I am on the right path is if I'm growing.
Yep. And I suppose for us, what we've noticed throughout our conversations is a person is very much defined by their early years. So could you take us back to kind of your early life, where you grew up, and kind of what are the core traits that you think you got from your family?
Yeah, how far back should we go?
Right back, early childhood.
All right. Well, there are definitely a couple of really key moments that I've experienced when I was two and a half. The earliest childhood memory that I have is my mom. I'm the firstborn, and my mom was pregnant, like full blown 8, 9 months pregnant with a little boy. And I was just so excited being the only child to have this little boy come. And this part I don't really have a lot of memory, but my mom would tell stories about how she would take me grocery shopping, and then all of a sudden I'm throwing the biggest tantrum, like on the on the floor in the grocery store, kind of next to my mom who's 9 months pregnant, and just kind of screaming and yelling, I want my little baby, I want my baby, I want my baby. And but the memory that I do remember is of my dad lifting me up in the hospital and showing me behind this glass wall where my little brother was in the hospital in this little crib. And part of the reason why this memory is so ingrained, like I remember the smell of the hospital, I remember my
Mhm.
dad picking me up, I remember literally the entire scene, I can see it immediately. Part of the reason for that is because it was such a traumatic experience because my brother ended up passing away in the
Oh.
hospital. So then I end up as a toddler who, is still kind of obviously growing. I'm watching my mom grieve
Mhm.
a baby that she couldn't have or she didn't have. So I do think from those early moments, when I reflect back on it, I really understood and just kind of this seed in my soul and my heart, however you want to describe it, was put in my heart to want to help other people. I became this healer and this fixer, and didn't want my mom to suffer, wanted to fix my family dynamic, if you would, because that was a big loss that I
Mhm.
experienced. Never wanted anybody to be sad in that way. So that was really the first moment that defined some pieces of what I ended up doing in all of my life. All of my entrepreneurial journey has really been about wanting to help people and wanting to reduce the suffering of of individuals, of humanity, really. And then fast forward, I was born and raised in Iran.
All right.
Yeah, so I moved to the United States when I was 16 years old, and so I didn't speak a word of English. And if you're an immigrant to any Western country, you kind of know, like, you come from a Middle Eastern, really a third world country. My parents, they brought all of their savings, like years worth of a savings, and all of their, like, they sold their house and they sold, and over here in the US, it would last like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden we're like middle class, maybe higher middle class in Iran, and we come here and we're like
Yeah.
barely poverty line, and we're like crammed in this little place. And 2 weeks after I moved, I was thrown into high school. So I don't speak a word of English. There's a massive culture shock. I'm 16. The hormones are through the roof. Like, I'm mad at everybody, and a new country, and I don't have my friends around. I mean, you can imagine
Mm-hmm.
the dilemma, the struggle. I didn't fit in. I didn't look like anybody else in that town that we were in. It was like predominantly a white neighborhood. There was no diversity. And as soon as I could, I think I was like 16 and a half, you could start to get a job. I started to get a job at a fast food place, because the only thing that felt like freedom as is for a 16-year-old was maybe I can make a bit of money to buy the things that a 16-year-old girl wants to buy, like some
Mm-hmm.
clothing, some makeup, probably. And I got this job and I barely lasted in the job because I was at a fast food place. I was a cashier there, and I just would look around and be like, "This is the reason I've got to start some kind of a business on my own." Now, mind you, my parents, they have zero business experience. They're both my mom was a teacher, my dad was a professor at the university. So if anything, they would have been like, "That is not the smartest thing to do. Like, go be a
Yeah.
doctor, go be an engineer or something,
Yeah.
lawyer." So fast forward, quit that job, or I may have been fired, I'm not sure. So I decided I was good at math, and even though my English wasn't good, I could speak, like, math was
Yeah.
easy to communicate. So we had these kids in the neighborhood that sucked in math. They were younger kids, younger than me, and the mom came over to my parents' house, my house at the time, and they knew I was really good at math. So I started tutoring kids in math. And so that was my really, like, first quote quote business. It's taste of money, if you would, at 16. And then soon enough, I realized I only had a couple hours a night to tutor these kids. It's very limited for, I forget how much I was getting paid. Then I learned leverage, because then I would go to the other kids in high school and I would be like, "Hey, can you teach this kid?" Because I was getting referrals. "Can you teach this kid and I will give you a kickback?" So I started this underground tutoring company at 16. And then I ended up getting accepted at Berkeley. And I liked the idea so much, and I liked teaching and helping, that actually it continued while I was at Berkeley. And then I went to chiropractic school. Again, this business continued. And then after chiropractic school, I decided I was going to open up my own practice. I'd already failed at having a job. So then I did that, and that in itself is a whole nother story. But those are the I think the pieces that made my entrepreneurial, that made me want to go in that route. It was like something for me out of the survival mode that I was in, and it would pay off.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask a massive favor of you guys. At the moment, we're putting a big priority on growing our YouTube channel. So if you aren't already subscribed to us there, if you could head over to YouTube, type in the Quest for Success podcast, or just click the link down in the show notes below, head over to our channel and subscribe to us there. You'll get access to all of our video interviews that we do with our guests. And it will do us a massive favor because it will help us grow the show, which means we can get on bigger and better guests for you guys. And with that, back to the episode. And do you think there was any like core values that you took from either one of your parents?
Yeah, my mom definitely was more of like, you can do anything you want. You can do anything you set your mind to. You can do. And I think with my dad came, it was more the support that I received from my dad, that led me to believe, like, even when I started my business as a private practice, my dad took a loan on his house to buy me an X-ray machine, and that in itself, and I had nothing. I mean, this is a lot of risk. I had $300 when I just started my business, so I think he showed the core value, and the support showed in the actions that my parents really took at that time.
Mhm. So Nona, what happened to that tutoring business? Initially, you started after you start going to chiropractic. Have you sold it or given to someone or
I
just
mean, it wasn't big enough, and I didn't. I know I didn't sell it to anybody, but I did. Even when I was at chiropractic school, I would go to the library and meet people at the library of the chiropractic school, and I would tutor them while I was there.
yeah?
So it did continue and paid for some of my
I
schooling.
guess it's part of the journey, right? Did you take any learnings out of that experience?
Yeah, out of that experience, and I think also out of a personal struggles of at 16 moving into a new country, I really, one of the biggest things I learned early on was the power of sink or swim.
Uh-huh.
um, and walking outside, walking, or sometimes being forced or thrown outside of your comfort zone. Because I remember when I was trying to learn English, there were other kids that spoke Farsi. They spoke my language. And if I went to go be friends with them and hang out in those circles, then one, I would have an accent like my uncle who had lived, in the United States for 20 years. So I didn't want that. But also, I was purposefully putting myself in situations where I would have to expand. And I learned that early on. And as an entrepreneur, we have to be really intentional about putting out, because there's nobody else. There's no teacher, there's no boss, there's nobody else telling you. So you consistently have to put yourself in those situations that create some level of sink or swim. And I also learned that you get to swim
Yep.
almost every single time.
Yep.
And then tell us about that kind of transition into chiropractic. What kind of triggered that?
I think the underlying factor was the fact that I really just wanted to help people, and I didn't want to go into medicine. I was looking for something alternative, and I studied neurology at Berkeley, and most people don't have the deep understanding that chiropractic actually has a lot of neurology involved. So it was a natural progression from neurology to chiropractic. And I'll be honest, it was more of an entrepreneurial journey, because I knew if I go into chiropractic, I can have my own practice. I would have a pretty high cap in terms of the level of freedom, whether it's finances, time, and energy. I could really set my schedule, and that's really what happened. The first 3 years in business, I burnt out, and I sort of did things the way that traditionally had been done, right? And I'd followed the system, the matrix, like get married, have children,
Yeah.
do the thing, go to school, listen to your be an A+ student. So I did all of that, open a business. I did all of that, and my business was doing great. However, completely burnt out because it wasn't really in alignment with the kind of life that I wanted to create. I wanted something where I experienced more freedom, more adventure. I was really a slave to my business at that point. But the to answer your question, it was because I really just have always wanted to help other people. Still to this day, I have multiple businesses and different masterminds. The purpose of everything that I do, whether it's a social media thing or something in my community or this podcast, is if I can reach one person that it can influence them in a positive way, then I've done my job.
That's amazing. So Nona, what other things you're doing at the moment?
Right now,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, where do I start? So many different things. Um, right now I have a couple of I love teaching.
Uh-huh.
I've always loved teaching, as you heard part of my story. But I have channeled that with my love for spirituality and growth and entrepreneurship and business. And I teach that inside of a community of entrepreneurs on weekly basis. And then we do some business and life coaching. One of my favorite things to do is to figure out how to collapse time and to be more efficient. And I actually learned this early on in business because the first business that I started was my practice. And I would put in all of this time into it, completely burnt out. Year 3, I almost got out of
Mm-hmm.
business. And then I decided I was going to do things differently. And there's a great show in the States. It's called it's actually very not well known at all.
Mm-hmm.
So in the US, people wouldn't know of it. You guys wouldn't know of it. It's like this little tiny little show. It's called Undercover Billionaire. And what they do is they follow 4 billionaires, self-made billionaires, and they give them $100, $100, a beat up truck, and they give them 90 days to build $1 million business. Okay. They take their contacts away, they put them in a new city. I mean, it's this like adventurous
Mm.
thing that they follow
Mm.
through. So I got hooked on this show, and I kind of like some version of Shark Tank,
Yep.
entrepreneurial show. And I started watching it, and one of the entrepreneurs, one of these billionaires, happens to live in Orange County, where I live half the time. And so I a little bit stalked him on LinkedIn. So I sat down with him one day and had lunch with him, eventually with him and his wife. And one of the questions I asked him, I asked him tons of questions, but one of the questions was, how come 90 days?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how come 90 days? Was it a logistical thing? Did it have to do with, I don't know, is that what it takes to build a business? How come not 120 days, or how come not 30 days? And then he said something that was really profound, and it completely shifted my perspective. He said that if they had given me 120 days, it would have taken me 120 days to build $1 million business. They had given me 30 days, it would have taken me 30 days to build a business. And then I started to go down the rabbit hole and studied this a bit more. And I learned that this is called the Parkinson's law. The amount of time that you allocate to getting something done is the amount of time that it takes to get that thing done. We've all experienced it to different levels, right? So that was the beginning of me trying to create a kind of business that integrated much better in with my life, with the life that I wanted to create. So in my first business, after burning out in practice because I was just a slave to my business and
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have a lot of freedom, I started to implement this success principle and a couple other success principles, and I was able to move into a part-time lifestyle. I opened up 3 other locations and a couple of other things that I took on, and yet I was spending half, like less,
Yeah.
50% less time doing that. And then in the more recent years, I've tapped into what it would be like to live a 1 week a month lifestyle as a business owner, which is this concept of collapsing time so much so that you're spending a week on scaling and growing the business and making it profitable, and then having the freedom or options to create, to go back into the business if you choose to spend time with your family, to volunteer, to contribute, and do all the things. So that has been a journey. I'm writing a book about it. I have a mastermind around that. And all of that has to do more with the mindset
Mm-hmm.
and less with strategy. And those are some of the things that I have been kind of diving deeper into.
Mm. I actually seen a video of you talking about the mindset, and you're
Mm,
saying that pretty much you're limiting yourself.
hmm
And then you're talking about like even success. Just had a quick look at it and saying, the traditional way of doing it, we are the one actually limiting because it's too hard, too
mm,
difficult. Like, going to work is hard. So we
yeah.
have that mindset all negative, right?
Yep.
Is that how you explain? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, think about it. In almost every culture, you are told what? To work hard to be successful,
Yeah.
right? There's struggle that is attached to success. Like there's phrases that, like in the US, as an example, just because I live here, money doesn't grow on trees,
Mm-hmm.
or money is hard to come by, or you're not made out of money, or it's going to cost an arm and a leg. So there's all of this that basically trains our subconscious mind to make a neurological association of success with struggle, of
Yeah.
success with the hustle, right?
Yeah.
Or with hard work. And so if you have that neurological anchoring between the two of them, it's very difficult to create that separation. And most people I think are familiar with Pavlov's dog, right? The wires that run together, they fire together, they're going to wire together,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I am running success and struggle and I'm running it at the same time in my neurology, then guess what I'm going to experience at every level of success. It doesn't matter if I've had $100 million exit. It doesn't matter if my bank account is full. It doesn't matter all my bills are paid. Or if I'm struggling, either way, I'm going to associate success with struggle. So I'm going to attract more of that at every level. And I've seen it in entrepreneurs that I work with all the time. So it becomes more about unhooking and creating different neurological anchoring so that business becomes joy, so that money, wealth, freedom, the lifestyle that you would like to experience or the level of contribution you want to have is hooked with joy and love and peace instead of struggle and hard work.
I quite like that. Yeah.
And what are some actionable ways that people can actually go about doing that, like shifting their mindset?
Okay. So I have this process that is a 4-step process, and it helps people quantum leap. Now, this could be in any area of life. So a shift in mindset, most people would say, what? Go do affirmations or just do it. Or I don't know what else people say. But there's a process that needs to happen for the nervous system to actually feel safe moving into a new version, a new vision for business, a new vision for life. And speaking of that, the very first step of any quantum leap that you're about to have, whether it's in your relationship, in life, in business, the very first step is having a very crystal clear vision for where you are headed. And that includes, what does that feel like? What are the emotions that you would have once you are at that next level? What are you feeling? What are you grateful for? What are you reflecting on? What are the thoughts that you're experiencing as you are in that next level? And including all the different things that you want. And this is one of the things that I teach people kind of develop in Elevate Club is we go through 3 categories just in the first step, which is wealth, lifestyle, contribution. That's all one. And then we've got health. What do you want your health to look like, to feel like? What you want your body, what level of flexibility, strength, mobility. And then, of course, area of connection. And that goes connection with yourself, connection with your higher self, connection with other people, your partner, and family and friends. So laying it all out for this vision that we want of the future. Now, most people will lay that out at the beginning of the year, usually sometime in January, and they go, this is the life I want to live. But the nervous system does not feel safe at that level. The nervous system is safe over here, sort of playing it small for the amount of potential that we have. So that's why I developed the next 3 steps. The second step in the process would be to figure out what's the identity of the version of you that is already living this dream life, right? Because my identity as a business owner might be limited, and that is how I make certain decisions. Identity will always drive your behavior. So
Mm-hmm.
if I feel like I'm a fit person, naturally I'll go to the gym. I don't have to write it down every January. If I feel like I am a good mom, I probably don't have to think about in what ways can I be a good mom if that's part of my identity. So identity will always drive behavior, So if we can get intentional in step 2 in figuring out who is the version of Nona, who's the version of Jam or Dylan who is living that next level lifestyle. What are the pieces of the identity? So if you say, I want to be a great investor, entrepreneur, okay, well, how would that version of you show up? That version of you probably takes really fast action. The speed of implementation is more confident version of you, makes decisions really quickly. So what are the pieces of the identity that I need to express more of? And then, of course, what are the pieces of identity that I need to express less of? Because there's a part of me that's a procrastinator. I got to be less procrastinating. If there's a part of me that is not showing up fully to the things I do, to this podcast or to a Zoom call or to an email, well, I got to work on that, and I got to show up less like her and more like the next version of myself. So in step 2, you're kind of creating that identity. And then in step 3, there's the embodiment. So I will show up to this podcast as I'm having this conversation with you guys, and I will show up as the version of myself that's already living this life and is showing up as the more confident, as the more vibrant, more present version of myself. And I think in this process, before I go into the last step, sometimes people will say, because this will come up in somebody who's listening in their head, well, isn't that faking it till you make it?
It is, right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So my answer to that is what we are doing currently in this frequency is actually more faking it. Because if you're not expressing your full potential, then you're faking it. If you're playing small, then you're faking it. By you tapping into and getting in touch with what the next level consciousness of you would be doing, that's actually the most truthful, the most authentic version of you that you're showing up. This version right here, me sitting here, this version is really faking it. Maybe there is insecurity. Maybe there's a bit of like, am I saying the wrong things? Or how does my nose look in this video? Or what am I sounding like? That is the version of me that's faking it, because the real version of me is at full potential.
So, in a very, like a nutshell, it's more of a kind of visualizing what's the future look like, what you want to become. Is that easy way to describe?
That is definitely part of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because the way that your nervous system works is that you have to include all of the senses.
Yeah.
So in step 1, I teach that people will create a vision that includes all the senses. So they're kind of, what would you hear when you are at that level?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you see? And what would you, if you're touching something, what does that feel like, as an example?
Yeah.
And that's definitely a part of the equation. And then part of the nervous system says, I'm not going to, the nervous system, in order for anything to kind of become a pattern in your system and you end up doing it, a pattern for success, as an example, your nervous system requires both parts of the brain. So it goes the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. So the left side of the brain is just like the logical piece. I'm taking these steps. These are the mechanical things I got to do. This is the systems. This is the marketing, the things you got to do. The right side of your brain is more the emotional portion of things, is the more creative portion of it. And then there's the limbic system, which is in the back of your brain. And that is really where we process majority of our emotions. So if I can combine the visualization, like you are saying, and then add the emotions into it, then now my brain is anchoring in success with joy, like we originally talked about, instead of success with hustle. So that is kind of how you rewire the nervous system for some of those things.
That's really nice advice, because Dylan and I, we talked about, I mean, as a family as well, we kind of have a 4-year plan. So we talked about it on a quite regular basis, so we actually visualizing it, we can see it. And I mean, some of the things that you shared, definitely we can apply, yeah, that's really amazing. What do you think of like self-doubt? Is that something that you think stopping you, maybe more of a like a imposter syndrome, like sometimes you feel like, well, I'm not good enough, or what I mean, you've probably seen many entrepreneurs, even they're very successful, they feel like, oh, there are better people than me, like, do you think that's kind of stopping you to get to where you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that any kind of a negative emotion or negative thought or limiting blockage, that's where you're kind of, well, that's fake. Those are things we picked up along the way. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, when you're born, you really only have two fears. A human body only has two fears. One is fear of loud noises, and the other one is fear of loud noises and fear of falling, not
That's
failing, but
interesting.
falling, right? So as a baby, when you're in your mom's womb, it's warm in there and the effect of gravity is not all that much. So of course, when you come out into the physical world, you are afraid of loud noises and you're afraid of falling. But even as a baby, we're not like, oh, is someone gonna drop me, or is there gonna be a loud noise, like the way that we process fear. It's more like a reactive response, right? Or a reflex that happens. Everything else that we pick up, whether it's self doubt, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of whatever, not being good enough, all of that has been picked up along the way. Now, traditionally in psychology, if you're going to a psychologist or you're working with traditional ways of dealing with things, which I'm a big fan of. If you need to, and that works for you, great, you should do it. But traditionally, the idea is to go deeper into why did you pick that up? When did you pick it up? Hey, my mom said this, or here's what happened on the playground, or this is the trauma I experienced. Where when me coming from my background with the neurology, I would say the way I've made it work for myself. And by the way, I've done both. I don't want to say the traditional ways don't work, but one of the ways that it's really effective is actually having that next level vision for life, and then keep taking your nervous system there and almost living there for as much of the time as you possibly can, so that your nervous system can get used to being a confident, assertive decision maker, or whatever it is that you want, the opposite of self-doubt and the opposite of imposter syndrome, right? Like, who do you want to be in this next level?
Yeah.
So you would take those things that you have identified, if it's self-doubt or imposter syndrome or any of those, and you plug those in step 2, which is, what do you want to experience instead? If you don't want self-doubt, what do you want to experience? Okay, maybe it's certainty.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to experience certainty. And then in step 3, you go, okay, step 2, I identified it. Step 3, how can I embody certainty? Where can I show certainty on day-to-day basis? And also, where do I feel it in my body, and how can I feel it more in my body, and then extend it beyond the body and into the energetic fields that I'm a part of? And that way, in step 3, in the last step is, okay, what are the actions that I'm going to take
Mm-hmm.
from a place of certainty, not from a place of self-doubt?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you spoke a lot about vision. What's
Yeah.
your vision?
Ooh. Um, right now, I am living such an incredibly blessed life. I have 2 little boys, and they are just so sweet. They're such an expression of love. So I'm truly living that. I'm with the partner of my dreams. I live between Laguna Beach and Italy. So
Beautiful.
everything that I live right now has actually, it used to be part of my vision. It used to be things that seemed so unreasonable. Oftentimes I share the story about when I was a new mom. So one of my boys, he's 9 years old. I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old right now. So the
Wow.
9-year-old was just born. And this is when I was in the thick of my business. And I took I put him to sleep to take a nap. And then I took a call with my staff. I had 13 people working for me at the time. And then I walked right over to the closet and I shut the door and I shut the lights and I started crying. I started just bawling my eyes out because I was, first of all, postpartum depression. Second of all, as I mentioned, I checked off all the different things that I was, I go to college, get married, have children, and they're supposed to bring you happiness or they're supposed to bring you success. And yet here I was, and I not only wasn't experiencing any of those, but I had also worked so hard, because remember that anchoring, that's what my parents told me, work hard. So I'd worked so hard and built this life where I really felt completely trapped into it. And so in that closet, I remember having the vision for the life that I live right now for just a moment. And while I was sitting there, while I was sobbing, I remember a couple of things. I remember thinking, that is so unreasonable. You're unhappy in your marriage. You're depressed. Your business, sure, it's doing great. However, you're completely a slave to it. You feel trapped, all of these things that I was experiencing. So this vision for the life I just described to you seemed so far out there and so unreachable, so unreasonable. And I remember making one decision where I told myself, I said, instead of keep questioning the vision and saying, how is this going to become a reality? How am I going to live this life? How is this going to happen? This is so not me. Who are you to think that this life is possible for you? Instead of all of those things, I'm going to continue to say yes to my vision. And so I did that. And so fast forward how 9 years later, I get to live here. And I share that story because I don't want people to think, first of all, that this is an overnight story.
Mm-hmm.
And second, that if that is possible for me from that moment in the closet, then anything you set your mind to is definitely a possibility for you, as long as that vision, you're committing to that vision and you keep saying yes to that vision.
Mm-hmm.
Part of my vision moving forward is to have a bigger impact and a bigger level of contribution out into the world and sharing my message. That's a really big part of my vision now.
Amazing.
And for young people like myself, how do you create or curate a vision? Because I feel like there's so much out there, so many different influences, like
Yeah.
kind of trying to take over what your vision should be. How do you just like curate your own vision?
I always tell people, start with 3 to 5 things that you want. You want, and do not question them. So, and do not judge them either. So, if it's a Ferrari, if it's a red supercar, if it's a house in the mountains that makes no sense, it's totally unreasonable, if it is a level of contribution that seems out of reach, whatever that is, find 3 things. Literally, that's all it takes to start with a vision. Start with what you know and keep it simple. And then if you can keep saying yes to it on day-to-day basis, then you can start to expand on it and give it wings. So if I write, I want a house in the mountains, this is one of the things I wrote down. Then I said, okay, well, what are some things that are must-haves in this house? Well, I definitely want mountain view. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. Well, how much mountain view do I want? Well, I don't care as long as I have one window, right? So then I put that down. And as you come across, your reticular activating system too, in your nervous system goes mountain house. And then all you see is mountain houses. You get invited to a mountain house. Same with the whole red car situation, right? So you keep seeing it, and then you can filter through and you can go, I would like this, and I don't want that, and I would like a piece of this. And so slowly, slowly, you start to expand on the one thing that you'd like to experience. If you're an entrepreneur in business like you guys are, if anybody listening, numbers are a great start,
Mm-hmm.
except you do not want to set SMART goal numbers, right? Because those are just within reach. SMART goals are measurable, realistic, a little bit boring, but they do not have you stepping outside of your identity right now. They just kind of keep you in this identity. You want to set goals that require a whole level of a different identity to show up for you to be able to accomplish them. And that is the process of evolution and humanity.
No, no, that's really interesting. We're learning quite a lot in this session. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom with us. I just want to go back to that experience that you talked about, talking to that billionaire, build a
Mm-hmm.
business, $1 billion or $1 million business in 90 days.
Yeah.
And you can also see some struggling entrepreneurs trying to start and trying to grow their business. How do you what do you see the difference between someone very successful create that business and someone trying and starting and struggling? What's the difference?
Certainty and the vision and where they're headed.
Mhm.
So this the guy I talked to, his name is Glenn Stearns,
Mhm.
billionaire in the real estate in the mortgage industry, not even real estate industry here in Southern California. And if you ask him, and now I'm blessed to be around so many very successful people at that level, or sometimes higher even. And if you ask any of them, what's the vision that you have? They'll tell you exactly what the vision is. They'll tell you how many employees, they'll tell you how much money, they'll tell you what kind of house, they'll tell you how they take care of their family, what's in their dream life. They'll have an entire list of, and they have certainty that that
Mhm.
is their right, that they are going to get there no matter what. And that certainty oftentimes comes from a certainty in themselves that if I say yes to a decision that might be risky, if it works out, great. I have certainty. If it doesn't work out, great, because I know that I'm going to learn from that process and I'm going to get up. All of that comes in from the certainty that you would have in your vision. Now, I work with entrepreneurs who want to be at that next level. And guess what's the first question I ask them? Where are you headed? And there's 3 paragraphs later, or, old 6 minute conversation later, and they have no idea. They're just kind of throwing things at me that they've thought about, but they don't have that clarity, that focused energy and attention on where they're headed.
That's really, really really nice. I like that certainty. Yeah. So take us through your Elevate Your Life book.
Yeah. That's an old book that I wrote. I wrote that book
Okay.
in 2015, I think. I wrote that book with a friend of mine, and there was a book that was in me, needed to come out. And my friend and I, and this is a great story about collapsing time.
Okay.
I'd been thinking about writing a book at that point, probably for 4 years. All right. And once I made the decision that I was going to write the book. So I'd sit down at my computer with a glass of wine and try to write this book and, pretend like I was the author that I wasn't. It just really wasn't coming about. Once I made the decision to do it, and once I was prepared to do it with the vision of what this book was going to be, and I partnered up with my best friend to write the book, we met up every Thursday and we time blocked the crap out of the schedule to write this book and get it done. And we were done within 3 months. And so we wrote
Wow.
that book in 3 months. Now I'm working on my second book, which is called 1 Week a Month Lifestyle, teaching entrepreneurs the mindset of what it takes to feel safety around freedom of money, of time, and of energy, instead of feeling safe and comfortable with struggle. So that's kind of the new thing that I'm working on right now.
And I imagine, like, with all of the workshops that you do, you encounter a lot of different, like, business owners. Uh, do you have, like, one big mistake that you see a lot of them make?
The biggest mistakes that they make? Yes, I would say, I don't know if this is the biggest one, but this is the one that happens often. It's
Mhm.
very common. Business owners will make decisions based on where they are and not based on where they're headed. So you look at a business, And here's where vision comes into play. And if you know where you're headed, right, you know you're going to need an assistant. You know you're going to need an executive team. You know you're going to need, or if you're looking to, for example, exit a business at 100 million, you know what the outcome looks like, right? So no matter what, if you know the outcome, most entrepreneurs that are stuck, small business owners, entrepreneurs, service providers that are stuck, they'll keep making decisions based on where they are instead of, oh, wait a second, if I'm about to have $100 million exit, well, what decisions do I need to make now for that? If I know that I need to have a team, well, maybe I need to hire an assistant right now, even though it might not be in the budget, right? Or even though it might be tough on the budget. So they keep making decisions based on the small character, version of themselves instead of making decisions based on where their business is headed. So if your business is headed in a big way, well, your branding needs to be done a certain way. Your marketing there's a lot more investment that you need to be made. I'm not saying put money where you cannot afford, but most entrepreneurs are living in scarcity and making scarcity-based decisions instead of expansive, inspired decisions and moving in the direction of their dream life.
And is that just a mindset shift that they have to make?
I think it's a mindset shift, and it is also a practice, like practicing a muscle of thinking from a future place instead of where you are right now. Because where I'm at right now, my bank account might be a certain way. I've got bills to pay, and I'm not in my dream house, and my business has only grown 10% in the past year. But where I'm headed, it's a lot more grand and it's a lot more juicy. There's actually tons of research on out of, I believe, in Harvard, where they talk about getting in touch with the future version of yourself. They did this study where they took a bunch of people at two groups of people. One group, they just gave them financial education. This is what you do. You save, this is retirement, this is your 401ks, pension, whatever. And then there was a second group where they gave them the education, but also they showed them utilizing AI what the older version, retired version of themselves was going to look like. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Pretty cool. So they put that picture in front of them every day on top of the same bit of information that the other group got, like, oh, make sure you save money. I don't know what they said to them. And what they found, and it was a long-term study. Don't quote me on this, but I think it may have been like a 7-year study, something long-term. They followed those people and they found the people who were in front of their future version, utilizing AI, some older version looking of themselves, aged version. Those people ended up making significantly more savings and retirement and different decisions when it came down to financial intelligence in terms of like making those decisions for their future. That group made significantly more important decisions than the group that just got the education. So how do we become on day-to-day basis emerged with the future version of ourselves so that we end up behaving as if we are that next version of our entrepreneur, mother, father, parent, whatever.
So it's almost like an empathy practice with your future self. Because like you're really just putting yourself in the shoes of your future self almost.
Yeah, and it's kind of actually an interesting conversation because I'm fascinated by this. If you can't tell, I'm super excited, but it's almost as if you think about your future self, right? There could be a little bit of resentment because the future version, she's got a 6-pack, she's living her best life. And then the version of me now is the one that's disciplined and shows up and does the things. So, and we rarely have an actual relationship with the future version of ourselves. And if we do, it's almost like I'm doing all this work and I don't even know if that's a possibility. So there's separation or blockage between this version and next version. So one of the ways that's suggested through this particular researcher was to write a letter to your future version. so that you can actually start to make a connection and write a letter from your future version to your present self, and create gratitude for all the sacrifices that the present self makes in the future self. So in some ways, in your mind's eye, you're creating this connection or this relationship that makes it safer to, head in that direction.
Yeah.
That's so
That's
interesting.
fascinating. I mean, I had some experience. I did some studies at Harvard Business School. Some of the guys, like one of my good friends, very very successful guy, he visualized himself 90-year-old, right? And he visualized him as a grandfather. And he was just telling that story. Now I can relate it to what you're saying, and yeah, like that's a nicer way to plan, like and visualize yourself so you feel comfortable getting that through, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
And Nona, what are the some of the daily routine that you do, like as a person, like any special daily routines that you do?
Yeah, this one's gonna shock you. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. I go over my life vision every single day. So I
Wow.
go through and I read through and I feel through the vision that I have for my future with my partner and my kids. And that's a non-negotiable for me. Another non-negotiable I have is a 45-minute version of some kind of meditation or visualization that I do. That's also a non-negotiable for me. And I used to wake up at 4 a.m. and do the whole, morning routine and all of those things. And now I just have those two non-negotiables. I try to fit them whenever I can, and then I try to show up as the next version of myself throughout the day in the small daily activities that I do. But those are my non-negotiables.
Yeah, so you actually do this with your family?
Oh, I do this with my family. I teach my children how to do this. Yeah, absolutely. And even the vision that I have with my partner, we have a vision together. We have the next house that we want in Rome, as an example, or the travel or the investments that we want, or the level of contribution. We do retreats together, so we have a next level for what our retreats would look like. We often talk about them, and even on daily basis, we have a process where you said you guys kind of talk about your
Mm, mm.
dream and your vision, and we go for walks and we talk as if the dream is here, and we sort of riff on what life looks like, and we do it in present tense so that we're giving it to our brain in the present tense, so we're feeling that safety and it is happening, and that certainty that we've been talking about.
Do you have, like, say for example, you can see, like, say 10-year plan, right? So you can see 10-year yourself, what's this look like, but do you set a plan, like a goal, like stepping stones, like, okay, what's going to happen next year, or second year, third year, fourth year, something like
Yeah.
that?
So the way that there's so many different ways that you could do it, and I think people should do whatever works for them. I've done it all. I've done it all. But the way that I do is I set a big, unreasonable vision for myself. So instead of a goal like I want to hit this number this year by the end of this year, I go really big, really outside of the comfort zone, and I call it an unreasonable goal, right, or a vision. And the criteria for this vision that I set for myself and I teach other people to do it is to go, listen, this vision that you set, two criterias. One, you have no idea how to get there. You should have no idea how to get there. You don't know anyone who's done it. You can't Google it. You cannot get a mentor to teach you how to do it. It needs to be so outside so that it requires an evolution, requires a level of growth that you haven't had before. Okay, so there's that one criteria. The second criteria is that that vision has to activate a voice in your subconscious that says you cannot do this, the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt. It has to be activated. If it's not activated, it's not big enough. It's within your frequency right now. So that's, to me, that's no growth. Kind of what we started
Mm.
the conversation with. So that's where were we going with that? I
Yeah.
got way too excited. You asked me, what did you ask me?
Y- y-
This, oh, how do I set the goals,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
So I have the big vision. And then meanwhile, I have short-term sort of themes that I go with. For me personally in my business, I have months. So I have it chunked down to months in terms of how I want to move forward. This month I'm doing this. This month I'm going to work on this. And then of course, just like any other business or business person or entrepreneur, I have a set of to-do lists that I will approach to make those kinds of things happen. The most important thing that has happened with me taking the vision route instead of the usual like left brain set a goal, get to it, which by the way I also did and was successful at. The biggest difference between the two is when I do the vision, I'm more likely to attract or see the opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily see when I was doing the SMART goals. Because now I'm in this frequency, my reticular activating system, all it sees are the mountain homes or so the opportunities based on that vision are showing up in my life. So that's creating more of a quantum leap and a faster results versus when I was just doing the SMART goals.
Mm, that's amazing. Nona, do you think, listening to what you're saying, do we think small?
We as a collective,
I mean, people, right? So what you're saying, there's so much you can do, but we are limiting ourselves.
1,000%. And literally that's what I want to tell people is you're thinking too small, go bigger, and giving people permission, not that anybody needs permission, but giving people permission to go bigger, to dream bigger, and to go back into that childlike creativity that we've all lost throughout life.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, something I learned also, you probably know, creative tension, right? So it's just like elastic. We can, even my team, even with Dylan, sometimes we have some arguments because, I mean, Dylan is so awesome. Like his stuff that he's doing is like, I don't think any other kid, like father son relationship that we have. We are very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have him. He's doing so many things for me. He's like my personal assistant, everything, right? And then sometimes, my wife always said, well, I'm not really appreciating. I'm not right. I'm keep asking him to do more, right? So, and yeah, I remember last week Dylan got upset as well because I keep saying, no, you could have done better, right?
Mm.
But I keep saying, I mean, yes, I could say, oh, you've done a fantastic job, and not pushing him to do more. I'm not sure. As a father, is this the right thing to do, or there's a better way to do it?
Well, I can speak from the daughter of, a kind of dad that you are today. If I could speak from her, I would tell you, and also I can speak from uh, the kind of human, based on my background and everything else I've experienced, of constantly wanting to people in my life to grow, constantly wanting because I see their potential, including my clients, including my community and my students. I see so much potential. In the last retreat, I cried about this because I told everybody, I said, if I have one superpower is I can look you in the eyes and I could legitimately see your full potential. And
Mhm.
it's a little bit sad because I know you're not there and I know you can be there. Now, in the past, the old version of me would have pushed Dylan, would have pushed you, would have pushed my dad, my even with my ex husband, in even in the most loving way, trying to make that shift happen or make that recognition happen. And ultimately, what happened is oftentimes it would drive people away. And oftentimes it would burn me out because I was carrying the burden for making them recognize, like trying to shake them out of their smallness, if you would. And I realized that That's not the way to go. And the way to go would be to be in a place of inspiration instead of trying to inspire others. So I live now by this quote that is really powerful to me. I want to say it's Rumi. It says, let your life be your message. So instead of me pushing anybody to get to that next level, I do the things that are the light of my heart and the joy of my heart. And I kid you not, I have had way more impact on people that are close to me and people that are not, like in the online community and my students, just by focusing on living an inspired life instead of trying to inspire other people.
Leading by example almost.
Leading by example.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. I mean, what we learned today is a lot. Like there's a lot takeaways, for us to even think, the way we do things.
But I suppose to kind of wrap this conversation up, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, a lot of the things I want to experience in life are more of what I'm already experiencing. I'd like to take my retreats to the next level. I homeschool my kid or world school my kids whenever I can, travel with the kids often. I'd like to do a lot more of that. More time off, more travel, more contribution. Those are some of the things that I would love to experience at a bigger level.
Yeah. And looking back on your journey, given that your definition of success was about always finding growth, do you feel successful?
I have made it a point to look back and define my success by the amount of growth that I have had, because oftentimes, as you can tell, I can get lost in the future. If I get lost in the future, then I'm not good enough. So I've made it a point to look back at where I was last year, where I was 2 years ago, 10 years ago. And every time that I do that, absolutely 1,000%, I feel successful.
That's amazing. And yeah, there's been so many key takeaways for, I think, both of us throughout this conversation. And I'm glad that you feel successful, because I would definitely agree with you. And I suppose while we've been chatting, I've tried to write down a few core traits which I think have led to your success. I want to share them with you. I think the first one is, I don't know if risk appetite's the right word, but you take things by the horns and you just go straight into them, give it all your energy, and you kind of perceive risk a little bit differently. Like especially in that example you gave, as quite a young girl, going out, starting your own tutoring business, and then going straight into starting your own chiropractic business, and all of these risks that you've taken, you've kind of just seen them as that growth opportunity. As you said, you've put yourself in your shoes, your future shoes, and known that you're gonna make good of this opportunity. So I think that kind of risk-taking behavior is definitely one of them. The second one is, you're a very deep learner, and that's pretty clear by all of the research and learnings that you brought today. But you're also more than just a learner, you're a teacher. And one thing which I've really found is the way that someone really understands a topic is when they have the ability to teach it, and teach it really succinctly as well. Because then that really shows that at the core, you understand the real fundamentals of what you're trying to teach. And I think that kind of continuous learning attitude is something that we're seeing across a lot of our guests, is always wanting to go and learn more, whether it's from the literature or from, as you said, like the mentor, these billionaire people, always trying to take the learnings and share it with others. And then the last one I've got is, you have like a very sure sense of certainty. And I think that's one thing that I've really liked about this conversation is you portray this certainty and confidence almost about where you want to go and the vision you have. And yeah, I think that's one thing that's kind of driving you forward. That is the driving force essentially towards your success. And so thank you so much for your time today. It's been a great conversation.
No, I think just summarizing in one word how I see you, you're very, like, you have that curiosity. You're very curious, which is pretty much, that's when you talk to people, you saying you're kind of spying on other people, like, because you are very curious to know what are the secret ingredient for their success. And So that continuously helping you to grow, right? That's amazing. I mean, I've seen that throughout the discussion with many entrepreneurs. That's probably a fundamental thing for the really successful entrepreneurs. Like that never die. Like want to learn, want to know what this person's doing and things like that. I mean, that's why we're here together. We're talking to you, and because we all are curious, right? We want to know from each other, learn from each other. And thank you so much for your time today. I think it's fascinating discussion, and we learned quite a lot.
And for people who want to learn more about you and what you're working on, where can they go and find you?
Yes, first I want to thank you for giving me the space and the platform. And what a great finish to tell me all these great things about myself. So thank you. I appreciate that. And that the fact that you guys recognize that in me has got to mean that you've got all of those things in yourself too. So I'm truly grateful for the time that you've given me. I think probably the best place where I can offer some resources for people, if this conversation resonated, if you follow me or just send me a message on Instagram, on social media, you could search my name, Nona Djavid, Djavid. And if you reference this conversation, since we brought it up and it was in this conversation about the 4 steps, I have a blueprint that I can send to anybody that I personally use on regular basis to take my life to the next level. So that's just a little free resource that anybody can have.
Awesome. Nona, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been incredible. And if you have found this conversation insightful, it would be amazing if you could go over and follow us or subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to this on right now. And we're trying to grow our YouTube channel, so head over to YouTube and subscribe to us there. And all our conversations are available on our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.